So I'm a rural researcher, and I'm working on rural tourism not just as a tourism aspect, but more interesting in rural development in general. And now I'm representing Aalto University, but research was made by during my work at the University of Helsinki Russia Institute. So this research is presented by mainly during this lab in Russia. So, and because I'm interested in this more rural development, I would like to start with some theoretical background. And it's well known that the economic functions of rural areas changed during last decades very much, and there are less like a production function and more development for services and for trade and some industries, but not as agriculture as the main factor. And these general tendencies, they processes show necessity to change attitude to rural areas and to change some direction of development of rural areas. And there is different theories of development of rural areas, and there is listed some of them, and I will not concentrate on each of them, but will take just some of theories of rural development just to see what is the role of rural tourism inside the rural development theories. It's my like a first task, and second one to see how it can be applicable to Russian conditions and how rural tourism developed in Russian situation. So the first theory which I would like to speak is differentiated countryside. The issue of rural differentiation has risen to great prominence in recent years as researchers and policymakers have come to appreciate the heterogeneous nature of countryside and forces which affected the development of countryside. And such differentiation determined by social economic structures, by activities types, natural human resources, location, or better say peripherality, demographic structure, historical cultural heritage, and so on. So on the basis of these distinctions, social, economic, political, cultural, and natural parameters can give or can create some uniqueness of rural territories. And this concept of differentiated countryside, there is linked to these authors. Because in the English context, we defined 4 types of countryside: preserved, contested, paternalistic, and clientist. And each of these different countryside, they have own characteristic. So if we speak about preserved countryside, it's located more close to major cities, and there are more immigrants, middle-class immigrants in this type of countryside, and the influences middle-class immigrants influence on local politics, local land use, and so on. And contested countryside have like a mixed structure. There is middle-class immigrants and both local business cluster. So it's influence on development of some conflicts between different structures, and so on. So this different type of countryside have like own characteristics. And if to speak about rural tourism, so we cannot just tell that rural tourism can be developed in each of these type of countryside, but there is just some specific place for rural tourism. For example, paternalistic countryside, which characterized by large private estates and big farms, and nowadays they faced with failing incomes due to problems with primary sector and looking for diversification of economy. And one of the way of the diversification is tourism, rural tourism, ecotourism, green tourism. There's different terms for it. So it's just like a theoretical approach. I will not speak more about it, and now would like to come to Russian context, how it can be seen in Russian situation. There's Tatiana Nefedova, who is a geographer working in the Russian Academy of Science. She when she speaks about rural areas, she told that it's a senseless concept because there is not united countryside. There is different countryside. So it's like a separately developed English differentiated countryside in a Russian case. And she divided Russia for 4 different zones or 4 different countryside, but the division is a little bit different. If in English context they spoke about more political influence and networking, how they different, but there, from Russian context they was put more as geographical zones with again own characteristic. For example, first zone, it's less developed territory in Russia. It's take more than 50% of territory, and there lived just like 1.5% of rural population of the country. And in Soviet times, this first zone, there was a big inflow of migrants because this territory there was natural resources development, and there was higher salaries than in other territories, and it's possible to save money and to then come back to the European part of Russia. But with collapse of the Soviet Union, there was stopped, and there at the beginning of the 90s, there was very huge outflow of migrants, mainly Russians, who returned back to European part of Russia. And now this territory is like a more traditional economy of small indigenous people. And for example, this is Sakha Republic, Yakutia, some examples of it. And it's like a external periphery of Russia, as Nefedova named this territory. Second zone is like a forestry zone, which take big territory too. It's approximately 22% of Russian territory and 3% of rural population. And it's like a periphery zone too, and there's more developed like a forestry and mining industry. Third zone is forestry and agricultural, and less by square kilometers, but there is live about 1/3 of rural population of Russia. And this is zone were located big cities, and there were big contrast between suburbs and periphery, and many conflicts and so on. This White Sea, it's a second zone, and 2 other pictures, it's a fourth zone, which is a main agricultural zone of Russia, and there's like a 60% of rural population of it. It's different too, though it's like we cannot say that it's even if it's put in one zone, they are different, and there's not like a united countryside. And the last zone is a fifth one, and it's located, and it's south of Russia, south of Siberia. It's mainly ethnic republics, and this more developed like a traditional extensive husbandry. Here it's like a one examples of differentiated countryside in Russian context. Another researcher give another like a definition of countryside, but she take it's like a from urban to rural continuum, and they divide it like a first Russia, it's major cities like Moscow, St. Petersburg, and other big cities. Then second Russia, it's another like a big and middle-sized cities. Third Russia, it's a rural area and small towns. And fourth Russia, it's more like a fifth zone here, it's ethnic republics, because it's very different situation. And when a small territory and many different nations live in the small territory, there's a lot of conflicts and different situation. So this, if return to rural tourism, so we can say that if to take this Nefedova's division, this fourth zone, it's main possibilities for rural tourism development because of nature conditions and ecological situation. And second zone partly can be defined and possibility for rural tourism. but Syöte, as I told, there's many big cities and ecological situation is much worse. But in general, if to speak, some of Russian researchers and politicians see rural tourism as panacea of everything. And for example, Russian Agritourism Association, they try put a goal to find these guest houses in Russia, to put on the map, to make descriptions, and like a website which created was in previous presentation, and they told that they found there's something to show in the map.
Do you have a pointer?
They found already put on the map more than 1,000 guest houses, and even they found in Kotka. But okay, there's if you count, it's very high on the north. I mean, it's far east. It's very far away. Is it working?
Yeah. Okay.
So if you put a goal, you can find rural tourism, everything, but it doesn't matter. Okay. It doesn't mean that if you find guest house somewhere far away in the north, that it's rural tourism can be seen as for this territory as a priority for rural development. So we have to define for each territory own priorities, and rural tourism only as one aspect. It's not can be for each territory be as an important part of rural development. Another concept which I want to speak, it's multifunctional agriculture, and the unity between society, landscape, and agriculture is seen as important tool in development of rural and agricultural policies. And the multifunctionality of agriculture means development of new kind of activities connected to the main production. And these new kind of activities interpreted as a new relation between rural economy and society, between cities and rural areas. And these new kind of activities take agricultural production as a basis, but lift far forward from simple production on line. And there is like a three direction: deepening, broadening, and regrounding. And they give possibility to diversify economy and give broad range of products and services on the farm economy. And this one of these aspects, it's like agritourism. Again, it's this multifunctionality give possibility for development of rural tourism. How it's applicable to Russia? I would like to say that in the 90s there was no concept of private property at all. All this land, forest, and agricultural enterprises was property of the state. After the collapse of Soviet Union, there's new structures have appeared, and could be this structure as a possibility to this new structure could give possibility for rural development and rural tourism development. And there's different direction. For example, this is new structure. It's modernized farm, which is big, so huge farms. And it's not a way for multifunctionality, and there is no place for rural tourism development because they usually have very strong specialization, like milk production, for example. Another way, new structure was created, but nothing was changed in reality from Soviet time. It's very old, almost collapsed farms, and there's again no possibility for diversification and for tourism development. And then arises question how this multifunctionality can be developed in Russian rural areas, and if we come to the farmers, private farms. So there was no private farms until 90s. Nowadays, there's farmers produce about 3% of agricultural production in Russia, but they're different type of farmers. Temporary, who at the beginning of 90s got from the state some loans or some land or forest. It just was like for a short period. They're still registered, but they did not work as farmers. And there is two groups of former employees of agricultural enterprises. Some is like a specialist, and now they have very good farms and working with big amount of hectares of land, and just former employees who like hard working and making some on the small plot of land. And the new group of farmers appeared already in 2000s. It's like young farmers, but I would name them as rural entrepreneurs because they, for example, if now it's profitable to make such type of production, like in Karelia, they produce hay for northern Murmansk region. They do it. If it's a little bit not profitable, they will change type of activity. It doesn't mean that they will continue as a farmer. They just will do something else. They can start rural tourism without farming, or transportation, or something else. So it's a new type of farmers or rural entrepreneurs. So, and if we to see on this multifunctionality and possibility of private farms for development of rural tourism, there is from agriculture to rural tourism. And there's this former employees of agricultural enterprises to continue to work with farming. They are can start activity connected to rural tourism. And they already have some farm, they already have some animals, they already have some equipment and so on, and they can continue. But it's not very often happened in Russia, and usually it's come another direction from rural tourism to agriculture, and especially for those who have money to invest. So at first they construct guest houses, and then started to this territory develop some farming that people can to do something with the animals on the field. And such cases, for example, very often developed in close to big cities. For example, in Moscow region, there is some new created rural tourism places where this like a constructed very rich cottages with everything what you need, and then there's some small amount of animals when people from Moscow could come and see how farmers are working. But it's come in another direction from tourism to agriculture. Another like a concept or group of concepts which I would like to see, it's in these three words: exogenous, endogenous, and neo-endogenous development. And if to speak about first one, the wrong direction. If to speak about first one, there is no clear state policy, state rural policy in Russia. There is agricultural policy, and there is program of social development of villages. But if agricultural policy is more or less clear, but the social development of the village is unclear program, and with very limited resources and limited goals. For example, gasification of villages, or reconstruction of roads, or computerization of rural schools, but not united like a rural policy. And there is state program on development of tourism, but there is almost nothing about rural tourism in the Russian programs. And so no concept of rural tourism or agro or eco or some other concept in Russian legislation, and there is real needs to create some legislation to act in the sphere of rural tourism. And there's at first to define concepts, what is it rural tourism, or what kind of term use, because there's voices from regions who speak about that we need to define what is rural tourism. Another like agro-tourism association, they will not use rural tourism term, we need to use agro-tourism. So there is not united idea about it. Classification of guest houses, because they cannot use hotels, which is used around the world, classification for rural, some standards and so on. But if there is no state program, but there is some regional and municipal program of rural development, and in some cases it's just included aspects to tourism program, and some regions have a own rural development program. For example, in Leningrad Oblast, there is program of tourism development with some aspect of rural, but Ladeyne Pole district, which is part of Leningrad region, have own program of rural development. And what if we come to local level and to see the endogenous development, what kind of rural tourism we can find at local level and what it can give to rural development in general. There is municipal hostels, but usually they are in really bad conditions. So I prefer to not stay in such hotels if I will come to rural Russia. There are private hotels and hostels. Local, if it's created by local people, usually it's like as in Finland, it's strongly put into the nature. No any extra trees will be cut it, and it's well like this taking care about nature. But if you see for the Moscovites who construct hotels, it's just at first everything was cut and then put some houses. Not so many tourists comes here. And very often private houses use as an attraction of rural tourism. And there's new ways and construction of guest houses and cottages, especially for rural tourism development. And there is already examples of creation of tourist village. And for example, who will come for Russian study tour, we will visit Kinerma village, which is traditional Karelian village, and it's supported now as a traditional village. And they try to reconstruct houses, and they find money, local money and Finnish money, attract, for example, students for all university come for work here and so on. And local fests and local events as a possibility both for rural development and rural tourism. For example, this in close to Mikkeli in forgot the name, north to the Mikkeli, Haukivuori. There is swamp volley competition, but in Karelia, Russian Karelia, there is swamp Olympic games. It's not only volleyball. There is a lot of them, and when it's annual event already for many years, and it's not only examples of rural tourism. I would say it's more widely for rural development, because all hotels or small houses, private houses, guest houses, cottages are occupied for 100 kilometers from this place, because many teams come here, and it brings incomes to the many levels. And it started by two people who started to do it. Now it's close cooperation between different partners at local level. So it's very good examples of as a rural tourism became as a part of rural development in general. Or for example, in a Ruralian Institute project, Ladega Initiative project, there was organized Hay Fest, and it was financed by EU money. It was last year by EU money. This year this fest take part again, and now it's annual, and it's organized by local resources. So it's examples again of rural development, and the idea was to attract tourists to this territory. New tendencies which is appeared as branding of territories and branding of local handicraft production. But there is potential, some 2 slides and I will finish. There is potential for rural tourism, but there are a lot of problems. Low standards of living of local population, which influence of the lack of infrastructure. There is no resources to influence. As in one of the presentation was told that what kind of toilets that they have, what kind of showers and so on, is it enough for tourists or not? So there's not any convenience. And the lack of qualified staff, lack of knowledge and experience how to deal with rural tourism. But I have found 2 cases now in Russia when this university started to study program for rural tourism managers. One in St. Petersburg and one other somewhere in Siberia. Lack of information on center or information about rural tourism development. And there are some cases like Agritourism Association where they put this on the map, guest houses, but not so much. The biggest problem is that there was not in this rural tourism not so much influence on rural development, because majority of cottages, private houses, guest houses, they did not bring money to local incomes. It's grey economy. Very often it's grey economy. And even if we people did not want to register as entrepreneurs because Russian legislation did not give possibility to work easily as an entrepreneur. So, and very often, if it's guest house, if it's registered and they try to work with travel agency, a travel agency located somewhere in Moscow, St. Petersburg, Petrozavodsk. So, and the sail tour to Karelian village or Russian village, this money will come, taxes will come not to local municipalities, the village location, to the Moscow, St. Petersburg. So it's not bringing incomes to local economy. So we can say that there are two processes. Bottom up, it's very active. People try to develop rural tourism and try to develop own villages by different ways. But top-down direction is very slow and very narrow. And they come from both sides. Bottom is more strong, but they did not meet each other. It's like in two different directions. Because even if there are states some organize some programs, usually local people didn't know about it. Or these conditions to participate, it's so difficult, so bureaucratic that people say, okay, we will not participate. So they like comes in parallel but not meet each other. And so as conclusions, before 90s there was no preconditions for rural tourism in general because there was no private property. And if in Europe and in the world people moving from this 3S to 3L, in Russian case it's not so much developed. People prefer to spend money abroad, not to come for own cases. So in general we can speak that rural tourism is has a very chaotic development. For example, I found on internet several places where they wrote the first international conference about rural tourism development, first in Karelia, international, first in Altai, first in Belgorod. There's no connection between them. Each of them told that they first time organized. So no standards, no legislation. As I thought, bottom direction is bottom up. It's much stronger. So, and there are some, as a conclusions, strengths and weaknesses, like a SWOT analysis, what situation with Russia. But majority told that it's like a nature, ecology, heritage, cultural and historical, and it's as a strength. But weaknesses already I told this: infrastructure, staff qualified, lack of information, lack of languages, knowledge of languages, and so on. So rural tourism can be seen as a strategy for local development, but there is a need very strong cooperation between local actors, and there is need support from federal level to development. But in Russia, it's like a chaotic development where just like a small cases appear in different places, but not united system development. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for that detailed analysis of development of rural tourism and potential in Russia. I'm sure there are some questions, please. Anybody got anything, any burning questions or observations? I'll kick off with one in that. Some years ago there was development of rural tourism in the former Eastern European countries. Many rural communities were very excited about this and spent money investing often their own scarce resources. But it never came to anything. One reason, because there was a lack of tourists. The facilities were created in houses on farms, but nobody came. Is that a similar risk in the areas that you're talking about in Russia?
No, in cases which I visited myself and I read about other cases in Russian conditions, there's really interest to the rural tourism inside Russia exists, and but it's majority for like urban people who wants to come for a countryside to live, and for those who do not have big money to come to abroad and just to have holiday somewhere inside the Russia. And for example, in some cases there's people told that we can give you like a food and home to stay for a week, but you will work in our like places. So there is, in reality, there is potential, but I think it's more like a, how to say, because there is not so much convenience in rural areas, and it's like a more wild, exotic tourism, and of course there are some people who are ready for it, but it's not so much like a widespread. But I'm not sure that if there will be created conditions, there will be no tourists. It's more marketing.
Yes,
SEO.
it
So,
is
and
marketing.
if it's will work, so it will continue.
Yes.
I just wanted to comment one thing in your presentation. I am from Lake Võtsa region, Estonia, and I was really shocked and I was waking up that you have these Olympic Games in a swamp.
Why?
I didn't really actually understood, is it artificial swamp or it's real one? Because for me it's laughing at the nature.
It's real swamps, and I just know that people who organize them just clean it from roots and use this territory every year, and they're just like clean it after competition took place. And the same as in Finland in Aalto, it's every year take place this swamp volley, and there's like after competition they clean all the territory. There's like a responsible organization who do it, but it's real swamps, yeah.
Anybody else? Okay then, thank you very much indeed.